Hey everybody, Goose here, back with another Grand Arena video. We're in Season 4, Week 2, Round 3, the Championship round in the 3v3 versus ships. This one I am up against Luma, who's from Ghosts of the Force. You can see they're running a Sith Empire team in Arena and sort of a Chimera hodgepodge and fleet. Look at the roster, you can see there's a lot of glowing stuff. Two R7s, but a bunch of R4s. You know, a little bit lighter on some of the Gear 11s and stuff than what I'm running, but an impressive roster nonetheless. And we'll get into the tail of the tape here. Now looking back, you can see the GP is showing me with about 200,000 more. Not sure why, but the GP is still bugged. You can look in the relics, you can see that he's got 15 relics to my 10. I've got some more 7s, he's got a little bit higher. He's been very successful in Grand Arena, particularly on undersized wins. We have a similar number of Zetas, I have more Gear 11s, he has more Gear 13s, and he's got a little bit of a mod advantage for speed. Getting here into the round, you'll see up top he's got a Karth team with a Relic for Zalbar. I've never fought a Relic for Zalbar before. And then a Bugs team running a Relic for GBA. And then up in top, guarding fleet, we've got an unimpressive Grievous team, Relic for Bosk Bounty Hunters, and then a Relic for First Order team. Went ahead and decided that I was going to gamble and guess that he did not have Darth Revan in the back. So my favorite bug counter is to use my Galactic Republic, my Padme team. And typically that's just Padme, Jedi Knight Anakin, and General Kenobi. And this is a team that's a really confident counter. It can take a little while to sort of ramp up, but by and large, you know, with all the Geo attacks out of turn, triggering Padme Zeta with the 40% undispellable protection up, it makes for a very, very survivable team. So a lot of it is just sort of timing it out so that Anakin can get a decent hit. Here we've got 10 stacks of courage, and you can see we didn't quite one-shot the Brute, but we did take a good chunk of health off of the team. And you know, this fight, a lot of it is just sort of hanging on. You want to use your basic as much as you can with Padme to try and go ahead and give everyone's protection up. Same thing on the AoE with Anakin. You know, without C-3PO on here and some of the other things, some of the other characters, it doesn't go quite as quickly. Kenobi's too tanky to get knocked down into below 50% health to trigger Anakin's rage, and he basically tanks the whole time with his Zeta. And of course, you run into some things where you get a little bit of bad timing on when the Brute gets summoned. You can see there a couple seconds ago I was able to take the Brute out, but then he immediately came back, and so it's more just sort of sticking around behind him. A couple of times in this match I'm able to get the Brute down and then he pops right back up, where I'll be able to go ahead and stick him with you know, with buff immunity, but it just doesn't seem to quite work out. That was a spot there where I probably could have hit GBA and I just wasn't paying enough attention. But anyways, you can see this is, you know, they just keep hitting and not a whole lot happens. We got a big hit there from Anakin, where we wiped out everybody except for GBA, and of course he immediately brought the Brute right back. Took the Brute out and going back to whacking on GBA some more. Waiting for him to summon the Brute again, which is coming up right here, I believe. And then we just sort of bide our time until we get a good shot at him. And once, I mean, like I say, really the only key to this is building up enough protection, getting enough protection up to convert to courage so that you can do some big one-shots. And we should have that here in a second with Padme, I believe. Yep, here we go, a little more protection up from Anakin. And here comes the big hit from Padme, take out GBA. And so that, I believe, is a 51 banner win. So again, that's a really confident counter. It tends to work pretty much all the time. The only issue I've really run into is that you can't regenerate protection, so it can get a little bit messy. So next, we're going up here against the Karth team with the Relic for Zalbar. I was trying to think of what I wanted to use to counter this, and a lot of times my favorite counters for a Karth team are First Order or Bugs. And given that I saw a couple of the teams up top, I decided I want to go ahead and use my Bugs here. So I took in Geobrute Alpha, Spy, and then Sunfac. Sunfac gives you the dispel on basic to help control Zalbar. So went in and hit Karth a few times, and then I went and shifted over to Mission because I didn't want to trigger the taunt on Zalbar just yet. But you can see here off the counter with Sunfac, I got Karth close enough that we were able to one-shot him with Spy, which was great. And so far this is all going very much according to plan. There's a lot of survivability on the Geo team, and they typically punch well above their weight. You know, the one thing you can run into, particularly without having with Poggle the Lesser on here for an additional cleanse, is the days coming from mission. You can see there she just had a absolute, you know, barrage of shots coming off the assist from Zalbar, and she stacks potency. So if she doesn't land a daze or a dot, she just continues to stack potency until she does. So she's going to land them on everybody eventually. You can see here, go ahead and call the Brute back out. So we'll stick around surviving. Went ahead and took a shot with Spy, but he just hadn't stacked up enough stealth there to really do anything. So at this point, I'm sort of just treading water, trying to wear mission down a little bit before I turn the attentions to Zalbar. She's going to go on another little dazing spree here in a minute, I believe. But you can see it's just calling basics, getting her down, and I've finally gotten her under 100% health now, so the Trance triggered from Zalbar. And so what we're going to have to do is go ahead and try and clear it. Of course, I wasn't paying attention, and Brute had blind. Now everybody is dazed. So there's not, the assist train isn't coming, and this is just taking a little bit longer than it normally would. But as you'll see here, I think we get back to where we can go ahead and heal up, summon the Brute back. And mission is still under 100% health, so at this point, hitting her is not going to trigger the Zalbar taunt. So we go ahead and just try and keep on wearing her down. And we're getting close here to getting her down, and it goes pretty smoothly. It's taken longer than it normally has, but it's been pretty smooth. Then I made one fatal mistake, and I waited too long to hit auto when I'm fighting Zalbar. So as you can see there, despite wailing on him for a good 2 minutes, just unable to take him down. I feel like if I had gone ahead and thrown it on auto a little bit quicker, it might have made a difference. So at this point, I'm trying to figure out what I can use to clean up this lone Zalbar without investing too much into it. And so what I ended up deciding to do was using a Cad Bane lead, because his leadership gives additional potency to bounty hunters, along with Greedo and Sith Marauder. And the reason for it is, figured what I needed was some control and some damage. And Cad Bane has a Dispel and Stun. Greedo has a turn meter strip on his third special there. And then I was counting on Marauder to do enough damage to bring him down. Now Marauder is gear 12, and he has his bayonet, so he hits relatively hard. Now he's not going to hit anything like he does in our Revan team here in this lineup, but I figured he ought to have enough damage to be able to wear him down as long as I could keep Zalbar controlled with the other two. And the one thing you run into with a lone Zalbar like this, even though this one isn't modded for a ton of tenacity, and I do have the additional potency coming in from the lead, he heals 10% on his basic, and he's also Zetaed, so with his Zeta, he gets 10% protection back at the start of his turn for every dot on the field. And so you can see he just sort of keeps healing up here as we go through it. And he has the AoE with the Armor Shred that is stacking and hits pretty hard. And you can see it's getting a little bit hairy here. I think both my Greedo and my Cad Bane are only gear 8. And of course he's Relic 4 hitting them, so they're not standing up to it too well. But we do sort of manage to hold on here, get the control in, and finally Marauder's able to take him down. So all things considered, that was a pretty reasonable counter to bring in. It didn't cost too much, and we were able to open up the back row and take a look. And looking in the back row here, there's nothing really impressive other than that Django team with Nest. So after taking a look at that and trying to decide what I was going to do, I figured I would go ahead and go up top and try and tackle some of these teams. And with the boss team, I figured my best bet was going to be to go ahead and take in my First Order. It's one of my favorite counters, and it works really well, particularly on somebody like a Bosk that tends to have a lot of tenacity, because Crew's stun is unresistible, and it's 2-turn. So it gives you a lot of control in a fight like this to keep Bosk from taunting. And, neither Boba Fett nor Cad Bane were terribly impressive. So it's just about getting a little bit of control in, and once you can burn them through their protection, you get through that 100% defensive bonus they get from the Bosk lead. and you know, it gets a little bit easier. So I'm sitting here getting down to Cad Bane first just to get a 3-on-2 advantage, and from that point it's just working on Boba. The other really nice thing about First Order on offense is that, you know, they can recover so much health and protection. So, you know, it's 5% health and protection for every status effect they gain. So, I mean, it really does help out a lot. So Boba goes down here, and then for the next couple of minutes here, we're just sort of beating on Bosk. And I'll speed this up so you don't need to watch it. He basically stays stunned the whole time, but it takes a while to ramp Executioner up to get him to go ahead and burn through all of Boss protection. Then once he's through protection, it goes pretty quick. So you can see, and there we go, that's the end of that. So coming into the next team, I figured the best team left on the board was this crew team, at least in this zone. And so my favorite counter for First Order tends to be Empire, with the shock from Palpatine and obviously the fracture from Thrawn. You can really sort of control that team and deal with it. So I go in here with my Empire squad. And I was debating, normally I'll kick the turn meter, but I decided I still want crew to get going, so went ahead and threw in the fracture. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and try and get a little turn meter from our boy Vader, and see if we can't land some stuns. And we got 2, which was great. And there goes Officers, he's squishy, and now it's just a matter of beating down on Executioner before he can get going. Crew in and of itself doesn't really have enough damage to do too much to hurt you. And go ahead and put the fracture back on him and get through Executioner. And here's where it goes bad. I'll go ahead and speed this up so we don't have to watch the whole thing. So, as you can probably surmise, a Relic 4 crew, it becomes apparently a tall order for a Gear 11/Gear 12 Empire team. I'd like to think maybe if I had a little bit more firepower, it would have gone differently, but honestly, that was pretty brutal. So at this point, I figured I have lost. This guy has saved a lot of stuff for offense, and so I'm looking through these teams trying to figure out, you know, what I want to use to take everything down. With that Relic 4 nest, I decided I would go ahead and use my Jedi Knight Revan with Yoda and Jolee just to go ahead and burn it down and not worry about it too much. So we're going to go ahead and try and get Jango out here from the beginning. And I believe Jango and Canderous are only Gear 11. You know, my Yoda is Relic 7, and so this is, you know, not much for them. Now, of course, Nest is Relic 4, and there's a couple things to remember about Nest. One, with Jedi Knight Revan, you want to hit her with a lot of basics. You know, as part of his, I believe it's his leadership. As part of his leadership, when you hit somebody who has protection up with a basic attack, when a Jedi does, you reduce their max health pool by, I believe it's 10% or something like that. Now, Nest can resist that, and she gets a fair amount of tenacity from her relics. But as you can see there, it went down pretty quickly. It was 52 banners. Nest does hit through Foresight with the Zeta, so unfortunately she was countering and tagging my Yoda for some of that, but it went through quickly. Anyway, at this point I was trying to figure out how I could do a couple feats, because again, I didn't think I was going to win having dropped 2 battles already. And so I decided to see what I could go in undersized with. I've been pretty reticent to do any undersized battles in 3v3, and so this was a good opportunity to try and catch a couple, as I had some relatively weak teams. So going against the Phoenix, I decided to go with a solo CLS. Particularly in this lineup, you know, there's no counterattacks. The only damage is from Zeb, and I think he was only Gear 8 or something like that. You can see, you know, basic attack from CLS is just about taking Chopper down. So there's really no danger in this. It's a pretty easy fight. You know, Relic 3 CLS versus a, you know, Gear 8 Phoenix team, but you know, you can see Zeb got a few stuns, doing a pretty good job of dazing. I don't think I have enough tenacity on my CLS. He's modded more for damage. But as you can see here, that was a clean, easy win with 56 banners. And so, taking a look at these other teams, I decided I wanted to go ahead and try and squeeze out another solo. And so I figured I would take Han Solo and go after that Akbar team. And my thought behind that was I figured I didn't need him to clean up crew. So I figured I could throw him in here by himself, and he would do a great job of sort of burning this team down. As you can see, it's really no contest. My Han is Relic 5, and he hits like a truck. So there we have another 56 banners. And coming into the last team here, we had a I went ahead and backed out here because I figured I would hit my first undersized feat thing, so I wanted to go ahead and claim it before I did any other battles and forgot. So coming back down in here, we've got this one Wigs team left, which is sort of a low gear Wedge and Biggs and C-3PO. And I decided that I would go ahead and mirror match it. I'm not entirely sure what I thought was going to make this work out so well, but mine are higher geared, at least my Biggs and C-3PO are. And so what I did first was to go after Wedge here, and unfortunately I only landed one Confuse. Now I do have the Zeta on C-3PO, so he could have landed 2 there, but 1 was resisted, and so the Biggs unique kicks in where he gets 100% turn meter whenever he gets crit. And so of course 2 stacks of Confuse would have stopped that, but I only landed 1, and so things went a little bit sideways. I ended up losing Wedge, but it was still a win in a single shot, so that's clear. And then I came back up here to try and clear out this crew team, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to use, again without having to invest anything too heavy. I had my Bastila Jedi left. I was planning on saving that for Grievous, and so I was thinking of what I could use to clear it up, and I had this great idea that I would use an Old Ben lead with Chewbacca, and I started out thinking of Ahsoka, but eventually ended up deciding to go with R2-D2, the thought being that Old Ben would be guarded, which meant he couldn't be stunned, and I could keep him taunting or the other 2 under stealth, and then so he would be there to not be stunned, R2-D2 would be there to give everybody some offense up and drop some stuns on crew, and of course Chewbacca would have enough damage to burn through him. At least that's what I thought. Here, let's speed this fight up for fun. So when I got to the end of this one and realized that I had basically healed him more than I had hurt him, I went ahead and decided to back out. And at this point, I really wasn't willing to screw around with it anymore, so I went ahead and threw my Bastila Jedi in there. So Bastila, Hoda, and Ezra. And honestly, it was overkill, but I had had enough of trying to drop this crew unsuccessfully. So go ahead and give some Master's Training to Ezra. Go ahead and toss the rally on him from Bastila, and then with a flourish from Ezra, and that's all she wrote. Wish I had started there, quite honestly. So that leaves me with one team left to clear, and that is this fairly unimpressive Grievous lineup. And so with what I had left, I figured my best chance was going to be to use my Bears. And so I went ahead and with a Chirpa lead, with Wicket, and with Elder. Now the Bears are a little bit tough when you split them up. They do work a whole lot better in a 5-man team. But this little crowd here has an incredible amount of turn meter, and with Wicket some decent damage. And so again, it's all about calling Elder and trying to sort of go ahead and get through this. B2 is really the only real risk here. I went after Magna Guard first because I had to, and then I got him down far enough, so I figured I'd go ahead and finish him. And after that, it's really focusing down B2, so you can get rid of all of his turn meter gain and counter attacks. And this Grievous just wasn't beefy enough to really do much damage, and so we'll go ahead and let the Bears clear that out. And again, just like with the Padme team, one of the big issues with the Bears on offense is you just don't have any way to regain protection. Well, I take that back. You could put a Zeta on, onto Wicket, and then you could regain some protection that way. I've just not been willing to do it. And so I'll go ahead and go into the fleet here. He had a Tarkin fleet with a couple of bugs. And I went ahead and took my Mace fleet in. I've got, my Houndstooth with Bosk at Gear 12 and double Zeta, my crew at Gear 12 double Zeta, and then I've got my Anakin at Relic 7 with a Zeta. So this fleet hits pretty hard. Went ahead and just started laying a little bit of waste to go ahead and get TIE Fighter out early. And then, unfortunately, I came victim to the bugs and their multiple assists. And so we went ahead and we lost crew right out the gate, which, didn't have any impact on the fight itself, but certainly didn't help from a banner standpoint. So Geo Soldier's down, now it's just left for Spy, and in comes the Sith Bomber, which in and of itself is kind of a pain, particularly with the concussion mines and it dazing everything, so it definitely hurts Anakin a little bit. So I brought Ahsoka in, and of course she whiffed on her big shot. So again, off to just a great RNG sort of day in this match. But anyway, working our way through, we're going to go ahead and use the AoE from a Mace to give everybody some Valor, some offense up, take out Spy, and then it's just down to 3-on-1 here. I decided I'd go ahead and call in Plo Koon just to heal up everybody and try and recover a couple of banners. Do his little turn meter up, and then that was the end of ships. So, like I say, I didn't expect that I was going to win this. Unfortunately, I didn't capture a picture of the end, but I lost by 29 banners. He one-shot everything except for my Separatist Malak team in the back. I set the same defense I have in the past, with the exception of my fleet, which was Rebels this time. But anyway, it's been fun. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you all have a good evening, and stick around. I'm sure I'll have a couple more of these out next week.